Welcome to Weekends with Whitney. Coming up on today's show, meet a member of the greatest generation. How 94-year-old Tom Kerwin helped America win World War II. A member of the Navy, he saw firsthand the devastating casualties in the Battle of Tarawa.
We must have had 150 ships, all of us together in one. It was the largest armada of battleships and warships in the entire war. And we steamed the island and stood off the island about 5 or 6 miles and pounded the island with heavy artillery.
What happened next, no one saw coming.
The ships bottomed out before they could hit the beach. And so the Japanese that were hidden there opened fire on them and killed nearly the first wave in, nearly all of the first wave in, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 to 2,000 men.
Hear how they finally captured the island and how post-war Mr. Erwin went on to have a storied 40-year career in radio and television across Louisiana. Then Dr. Nick shares new tools on how any of us can get anything we want.
Let's take marriage, for example.
Okay.
I think it's really important for people in marriage to sometimes say, you know, I'm really not motivated right now in this marriage. Whole lot of chaos in this house, or a whole lot of this or that. I'm just not really motivated. I'm committed. And there's something about commitment that says this too shall pass. I'll get through this.
But first, Louisianian Tom Kerwin, how he survived the Great Depression, World War II, and post-war went on to become a pioneer in Louisiana broadcasting.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
When America went to war, 17-year-old Tom Kerwin went to work at New Orleans Higgins Industries, building PT boats and developing the landing craft that would later help win the war. After his 18th birthday, Tom joined the Navy. Why the Navy versus any other arm of the?
Because I didn't want to walk and march where I go. I wanted to ride. I just wasn't an Army fan. And they always said the Navy was so clean and everything, the white uniforms and all of that. And they didn't realize that when they got in there, they're the ones that had to keep it that way.
Oh. The USS Martin was now his home. His job, to locate and sink enemy submarines.
What I did was keep the submarine from sinking our merchant ships. See, everything that we shot in the war was never shot in this country. I mean, everything in the war that we used, tanks, guns, bullets, everything, equipment, had to be shipped there. And then particularly in 1942 and 43, the submarines, both Japanese and German, were sinking every merchant ship that they could sink. So we always had a convoy of ships like mine, which were sub-chasers, to go in front of a convoy of ships, hauling all these supplies to the South Pacific and to Europe, see?
Right.
And we would go out in the front of the ships and search ahead of them, so when they come along, we know there's no submarine there.
His first battle was one of the war's bloodiest on the small South Pacific island, Tarawa.
had an airplane runway on it, and the Japanese were using it as a stopping off point for bombing ships or wherever they could find a target. So our job was to make a landing on Tarawa and secure the island so they could not take off and fly from there.
The U.S. showed up in force.
We must have had 150 ships,
Oh
all of us together in one. It was the largest armada of battleships and warships in the entire war. And we steamed the island and stood off the island about 5 or 6 miles and pounded the island with heavy artillery, big guns, great big guns that shoot 16-inch shells.
For 2 days, U.S. warships pummeled the island with artillery.
Normally it's covered with coconut palm trees. And the island was virtually bare. It looked like nobody could have possibly lived through such a relentless bombardment. It looked like it had a shell crater in virtually every square yard of the island.
Thousands of Marines were positioned now to disembark in what Tom helped build, the Higgins boats. But no one saw what came next.
The first wave in hit the bottom before the tide was out, and that was a mistake of the war, because they didn't do their homework. And the ships bottomed out before they could hit the beach. And so the Japanese that were hidden there opened fire on them and killed nearly the first wave in, nearly all of the first wave in, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 to 2,000 men.
The Japanese had been hiding underground.
They'd owned the island for 25 years, so they had bunkers underground, places where they dug out tunnels and just holes in the ground, like a room underground. Some of them were as much as 6 feet deep and lined with concrete on the inside. So that's where they had hidden during all of the bombardment.
The bloodshed he witnessed was horrible, but hardship was nothing new to Tom. He grew up in the Great Depression. The son of a Louisiana tenant farmer, every day was a fight to survive.
My family was totally broke. There was just no money, and we had a very bad year of weather and whatever, and made no crop. There was no way to make money. To give you an example of how terrible it was, my father got up in the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, way before daylight, and rode a horse 6 miles to a railroad track where there was a small station in Galion, Louisiana, and unloaded a train car load of gravel with a shovel. He and one other man unload that carload of gravel, and they got paid $2 a piece for it. That's how hard money was to get. There just was no money to be found.
At the end of their rope, the family moved to New Orleans.
They determined to break the chain of events that had led us to this particular point. And in fact, my folks sold everything we owned, including the car.
New Orleans proved more prosperous. Everyone in the family had jobs. Tom, 12 at the time, had 3. At 4 a.m., he delivered newspapers. 6 a.m., he worked at a bakery. 8 a.m., he went to school. After school, back to work at the bakery. Life for Tom was better than ever. He often yearned for home during the war, as months in the Navy rolled into years. But he'd encounter reminders of Louisiana during World War II, like on the island of Guadalcanal.
2 little girls playing in the opening there in the jungle, and they were singing. And they were singing, "You Are My Sunshine." And we said, well, we know the Marines have been here already.
However, later, near the Philippine Islands, sheer terror. kamikaze planes took aim at his ship.
I'm up on the flying bridge, the top part of the ship. So we, on several occasions, had to dive for cover down on the deck and against a bulkhead to keep from getting hit. About probably 80%, 90%, I would say, of your duty in the Navy is quite boring. 10% is probably the highest, excuse me, highest high you'll ever have. Because it's life-threatening at that moment, at those moments when airplanes are shooting bullets at you and kamikaze airplanes are trying to sink your ship. That was the scariest, and that's the only time I ever remember really being cognizant of the fact that this could be it.
Yet he never feared America wouldn't win the war.
If we went into the last man, we had no intent. It was written in the stone.
A spirit that produced the greatest generation. Bravery during bloodshed, confidence amid calamity, sacrifice over selfishness. Values that post-war produced unprecedented personal and national success. Tom's career bloomed into broadcasting, first at radio stations in Texas, then Louisiana. He was an on-air personality at KALB in Alexandria. During the dawn of television, Tom was instrumental in getting that station's TV station up and running. He produced and anchored its first show.
There was a baseball warm-up program before the World Series, and that was the first one, 1954, September 24th.
He went on to become operations manager.
I did all the hiring and firing and everything about running the station.
What was your favorite, radio or TV?
Well, I preferred TV because it was better. And well, I liked radio. And radio we thought would probably just die out, you know, because why would you want to listen to something if you can look at it and hear it at the same time?
In 1967, Tom became Shreveport's 10 p.m. anchor at KSLA, as well as its pilot. He'd fly the company plane wherever the news took him. He'd often let the plane fly itself while he worked.
Well, I just set the automatic pilot, and I had a pencil and a pad, my regular reporter's pad. I'd write my story. And my photographer was right there, and so I'd tell him what I wanted him, and he'd make notes on it. As soon as we got off the airplane to get in the station, he'd get to work on the editing, and I'd get to work on the story, and we'd have it ready for 6 o'clock, but just barely.
Tom's favorite years in TV were his last 8.
They used to call me the Charles Kuralt of North Louisiana, and I enjoyed that more than any other time in the broadcast business because I had a motorhome, an airplane, a photographer, and did my own stories. Just almost every kind of story you can imagine. And some of them were fun and some of them were absolutely horrible. But I did them, and I had a very, very enjoyable career in the broadcast business because you never get up in the morning and know exactly what you're going to do. It's always something new. If it's not, you make it new.
He even did stories for 60 Minutes and interviewed some of the most famous people in the world.
I interviewed 7 American presidents, all of them since John Kennedy, until George Bush.
The list would be even longer, but in 1986, Tom retired after nearly 40 years in broadcasting. He continued to travel the country, though, in his RV, But now he had his wife instead of his photographer. He even wrote an autobiography.
Because I didn't have anything else to do.
Oh, don't believe that. He's never stopped. He's the youngest 94-year-old I've ever met. He's still driving his car, often all the way to Texas. So what's his secret?
Good, clean living.
Is that right?
And I'll tell you a little secret. 2 martinis every day at 5 o'clock.
I like that secret.
But no more than 2.
Right before our interview, at his annual checkup, Tom got these doctor's orders.
Well, go make an appointment at the desk out front out there for 1 year from now. I said, do you guarantee that? And he said, I guarantee it. He said, the condition you in, you'll make it.
A war hero and a superhero, all in one. If you'd like to know more about Tom Kerwin's journey from poverty to prosperity, check out his autobiography, The Time of My Life. And still ahead, new ways to get anything you want. Dr. Nick Explains as Weekends with Whitney continues.
Each morning in Baton Rouge, we rise to meet opportunity. We carry the weight of responsibility proudly. We choose our paths. We move fast and we fly high. We light the way for others to follow. We make it happen. But what really matters is what happens when we land at home. Baton Rouge Metropolitan Airport. Fly easy.
Often we don't feel it, but it is possible to get everything that you want. Dr. Nick joins us this morning with some great steps to get us there.
Yes.
Because a lot of times we feel like we're not motivated,
Yes.
right? Like I want to get that next position in my company, or I want to lose 10 pounds. And you go, but I'm not really motivated. Yeah. And you say we're approaching it wrong.
Well, Whitney, what I found interesting about the research that we're coming out of today is it's almost sometimes the opposite of what we think is the right way is actually the right way. Okay. So in other words, take motivation. Someone will say to me, oh, how do I get motivated? How do I get motivated? And this guy was theorizing, suggesting, recommending that it's not about motivation all the time, or even something. It's about commitment.
Okay.
If I'm so if somebody says to me, how do I get motivated? I say, no, the question is, are you committed? How do I get motivated to get up earlier? Are you committed to getting up earlier? Meaning, do you want to get up earlier?
And if you don't even try.
And if you're not going to commit yourself, because see, the commitment is before the event.
Yes.
Right? I don't wake up or sit there at 6:30 and say, oh, I'm committed, or I want to be committed. We've already made the commitment.
Mm-hmm. It's just following through.
It's following through. I think it's a great distinction.
Well, I think it would help your brain too. Like, oh, I'm not motivated to get up. You don't say that to yourself, because of course you're not motivated, but are you committed?
Let's take marriage for example.
Okay.
I think it's really important for people in marriage to sometimes say, I'm really not motivated right now in this marriage. Whole lot of chaos in this house, or whole lot of this or that. I'm just not really motivated. I'm committed. And there's something about commitment that says, this too shall pass. I'll get through this. Tomorrow's coming. It's not Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily in stone, but it's almost like saying that love is a decision. Wanting to live is a decision. We don't. Maybe he's saying that you don't feel it all the time. Maybe that's the same thing.
And that's
we don't
true.
feel it.
And that's true, but I do think that it will certainly help the mind and help us get to where we want to be if we just go, it's a commitment.
Yeah.
I made this commitment, I'm going to follow through with it.
Yeah, and one of the things that he suggests, which I really like, because we always talk about setting small goals, setting reachable goals. He talks about that in terms of commitment. Instead of making this huge commitment to whatever.
Have the perfect marriage.
Right. Say, I'm going to be nice to my wife for 15 minutes every day.
Or how about, I'm going to listen to her.
Or I'm going to listen to her for 15. Meaning that, I did that. See, didn't you see?
Little victories.
Little victories. Little victories.
I love it. And you say knowledge and results.
The thing there is, we need to be, pardon going to the word, motivated to learn instead of always get something. What did I learn from this mistake? What knowledge can I grasp? Where are my stretching zones? Am I reading? They talk about getting a mentor to help you take the contrarian view. Someone said the other day, no politics, someone said the other day, well, the climate change complex is growing. And when he was suggesting that, it's becoming its own economic system.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got a lot of climate change people that are getting paid. It made me think differently. I still don't think myself that scientists are doing it just for the money.
Right.
But do you see the contrarian view? You hear something that throws you and it says, I need to think that through.
I heard something the other day.
I need to study that.
I need to study that. We should all study that and pay attention. Wherever you fall on it, we all need more knowledge. But I heard something the other day that shocked me too, that said, at its current pace, our economy will fall 10%
I did see that.
because of climate change. Wow, right? That made me stop and go, what?
I did. But
and I need to study it because I didn't understand it all.
But that, I think, is the key. We don't just take, he said it or she said it. We really decide, I want to learn more about this issue.
You're right.
Now, I do think we have to be careful in that we don't have the capacity to learn about everything there is in the world.
True.
That's part of our problem, is that we live in a society where there's lots of knowledge. But we can certainly focus and say, I want to become more of an expert in this.
Right. Well, it's the same reason why we shouldn't either accept it immediately or dismiss it immediately.
Good point. Good point, and which makes for a curious, questioning, almost doubtful mind.
Absolutely. Now you say reprogram, work the mind.
Well, the reprogramming is so interesting, and I know you've heard me say it before. I've never believed that old dogs can't learn new tricks. And we think that when people reach a certain age, mine, that I'm not changeable. And of course, the neuroplasticity, these neural pathways, all this research of the brain is saying that we can reprogram ourselves. We can think differently.
It's never too late.
It's never too late to put new messages and new tapes because it's discipline. It's what I'm saying. And what's motivating about that to me is that if we've done something for 30 years, of course it's going to take time. So we rediscipline.
Absolutely.
We rediscipline. We start clearing our mind and maybe putting something else in there. The other thing that's important with that too is to say that we don't want to just say, I want to get rid of this bad thought.
Okay.
I want to what? Replace it.
Which brings me to another point, which you say is distractions. Because I think a lot of times we replace intention with distractions for, not intentionally, but there's just so many distractions.
Yeah, well, and what I would suggest to our viewing audience again is, it's really not enough to say, I've just got all these distractions. I can't focus. I'm just so distracted. Name them. Write them down.
Okay.
What are the distractions? Be aware of what they are. And then you're in maybe a better position to say, okay, that's really not that. I'll look at the telephone and it'll say 8 messages.
Right.
Okay, but I'm really focused on something. I'm not going to go to that right now.
Right.
I have set up a time every day when I'm going to answer my messages,
Yeah.
but it's not going to come when I see them.
Yes, I'm so proud of you for doing that.
That to me is a good example. I want to.
Right.
It's sometimes maybe even easier than having to sit there and write the notes.
Right, right. Now, the last one, to achieve anything you want also is rely on self.
Yes. What do you think? You tell me what you think about that. I think it's tough, but I think it's true.
I think it's tough. I don't, and we're in this world with other people for other reasons. But at the end of the day, I can't rely on the mentor. I can't rely on my exercise buddy if I'm committed to run, or to walk 3 miles a day or whatever. I just got to go out there and do it, regardless. Is that it?
I think that's it. Let's say I call you at 2 a.m. because I can't see, okay? Well, there's a chance that you're not going to be able to come at 2 a.m. because you're in Kentucky with your mother. I can't rely. I know that sounds like an easy one. It doesn't mean that we don't have people in our lives that we turn to.
Sure.
It's the reliance factor of, I'm so disappointed. I relied on you and you weren't there. It's not
At the
gonna
end of the
always happen
day.
with self-reliant. See, sometimes it gets a negative connotation because we're interconnected. All it's saying is, I can do this.
You're right. Thanks so much, Dr. Nick. More Weekends with Whitney after this.
Louisiana's Old State Capitol educates the public on Louisiana's rich history and the democratic process through exhibits, programming, and the arts. The museum is dedicated to advancing the collection and preserving this national historic landmark. Visit LouisianaOldStateCapitol.org.
Thanks for sharing your time with us here on Weekends with Whitney. We hope to see you back here again next week. But until then, we leave you with this.